Okay, so we made Decked Out Night in about 8 days. One of the fundamental portions of this game, if you've played it, is the character creation and customization through items. So just to give an example, if I run this real quick. So if you click the random button, then you'll see, let me turn that down, sorry. Click the random button, you see that it randomizes your colors and your hair sprite. You can type in your name and then hit done. Moves on to the next scene. There's a little fade out effect that would have been there, but I hid it so you can see the character creation scene in the editor here. I made it to the castle. So once you're in the castle, you can go up to any of these shops and hit space to open it up. And you'll see that we have all these items. This is, you can use the mouse or the keyboard. I'll use the mouse because my keyboard's kind of loud. But you see we have the name, we have what slot the item goes into, we have the cost of the item, the weight, the 3 stats the item has, which are all things we just made up and put into the items, and the description of the item. When you buy an item, it goes into the proper slot. Here's another primary weapon, so it's a good example here. Switch to the sword. If we go back to the razor axe, we already own it, so we can just go ahead and equip it instead of the sword. If we buy a secondary, it goes into the front here. Swap out our secondary something else. Again, we can just re-equip what we've already purchased. Let's buy this helmet, which is a pirate hat. The shops, when you play the game, they're randomized on each play, so the order of the items that are in the shop will be in a random order. You can see that as we walk, it's animated all to match up properly. Let's go ahead and buy a different secondary from a different shop here. Yeah, so that's a little bit about how that is handled. Well, not handled, but how it actually works in game. So how did we make this? Well, basically, let's start with the character creator. So in the character creator, we can randomize your stuff, change your colors however you want, change your hairs back and forth, right? And you might notice when you look at this character, they're completely solid white and they don't have any hair. When you launch the game, it'll actually pick a random hairstyle and swap the hair sprite out with that. So for a little more context, let's look at the player sprite. On the player sprite, or the player object, they're a kinematic body, and they have this graphics object, Node 2D, as a child. And this Node 2D houses all the Node 2Ds for each body part that can be swapped out. And then each of these body parts that have graphics will have a sprite that can be swapped out. And you can notice that some of these sprites actually don't have a texture assigned. So for example, the back weapon is what we use for the primaries, the weapons that show behind the player. So like the axe and the sword, when we played just now, for example. When we buy that item, the sprite texture is assigned to the texture of that item. For when we buy an armor piece, the shirt sprite is swapped out for the armor piece sprite, and the modulation is removed. The reason that the character is solid white like this is because when you go into visibility modulate here, you can change it to whatever color you want at any brightness. But it has to be started at white. If you start the character at gray, then you can't go like brighter than gray, right? So that's why we started with white for all the customizable color stuff. But on the structure of this, so we have that graphics Node 2D, the back weapon, and this is like the order of the drawing, right? So if you look at this, we have the back weapon, then the shirt is drawn, then the head is drawn, then the pants, and then the front weapon. If you look at the head container, there's a few things in here. We have the actual head itself, which is the character's head. So if I move that around, just their head and their hands. we kind of got a little lazy for some reason and made the hands part of the head sprite. I don't know why we did that. Anyway. So yeah, so that's the head. We got the hair sprite, which doesn't have anything currently assigned to it. And that is drawn in front of the actual face. And then we have the helmet, which is drawn over the hair and the head. If we actually look at one of these resources, Let's look at the axe, for example. We have the name of the item. We have the stats as an array of 3 strings. And we just go by the name of the stat, and then a colon, and then the value of the stat. And we just have 3 of them. The UI, if you added 4 to here, it would just like go off screen. We have the price of the item, the description. We have the sprite of the item, and each item has 4 frames, even the hairs. So we only have 1 animated hair in the game, and it's this little like wiggly looking thing. It's kind of weird, but we were originally going to go with 5 frames for each item, and then the 5th one was going to be the icon, but I didn't want to have to deal with that in code, so we decided to do a 4 frame sprite for all the items and hairs and stuff, and then a icon as a separate sprite. So some of the items in the game have a different looking icon than the actual item sprite itself when you're wearing it. We did have a little fun with some of the items with how that works. If you look here, we have the item type, which is an enum. So we have the helmet, the body, the pants, back weapon, front weapon, and hair. We didn't end up actually making any item resources. If you see here was a .tres file. For the hairs, we were originally thinking of maybe having a shop that sold hair as well, so you can like change your hairstyle in the town. We decided against it. We have the weight, and then we have a checkbox for hides hair and hides face. This is mainly for helmets, but like if you had a helmet, you can make it so it hides your hair or it can hide your face. But if you had a helmet that hid your face, then you wouldn't see your hands, but your hands are only a couple pixels anyway, so it's no big deal, right? Yeah, this is a shitty code review. This game was made in 8 days. But yeah, so that's a little bit about the structure of the paper doll itself. Let me think. What's next here? We've got the pants. Yeah, so the character's white so that you can modulate the color. It's laid out in the draw order of the character so that nothing draws over something else incorrectly. And we have a item resource script that we make these resources from. If you look at the item resource script itself over here, this is all it is. It's just a bunch of export variables. So string, an array of strings for the stats, integer for the price, string, multi-line for description, which just makes the box nice and big so that you can see the whole description at once when you're typing it into the resource. We have a stream texture for the sprite, a stream texture for the icon, the item type enum for the item type, and a float for the weight, and then a boolean for hides hair and hides face. There's no actual logic in this resource. The logic is handled by equipment code somewhere else. If we look at the character creator, this looks a little more complicated than it actually is. You might think by looking at this, there's a rudimentary brute force kind of way of handling character creation like this, and that's exactly what I chose to do. So if we look at this script here, we basically have this node2d has some export variables, and you might notice that these are all VBox containers. These VBox containers are the VBox containers that contain the 3 color sliders for each customizable piece, the skin, shirt, pants, and hair. So this is the skin VBox container. It contains an RGB. The shirt contains the same. And if you look at the code, they're directly mapped to these. So these are the node paths of those VBox containers. And then I have this setup sliders function, which assigns the RGB sliders individually to skin R, skin G, skin B, or shirt R, shirt G, shirt B. And then I grossly assign the colors of each sprite manually for each of the RGB values. And then we also store the color in a global variable for that customizable piece in the global script we made. So this capitalized global right here is actually a separate script. Yeah, gameplay scripts. This is the global script that maintains the state of the player to make sure that they look the same in every scene. So even when you die or whatever. We have our current hair index, so that's the index of hair that we currently have selected. And when the player is spawned into a level, it actually loads the equipment. So it goes by whatever the global values are set to. So the name, the skin color, shirt color, the hair color, what texture the hair is, and then what the weapons and equipment are supposed to be. And I made this equip item function, which does a little bit depending on the item type. So even more brute force code down here in the equip item function. It takes a item resource, and then depending on the item type of the resource, it puts it it swaps the right sprite out. Something else I'm not sure I mentioned is, notice how the pants here is just the pants, but the bounding box of the pants is this whole orange box here. That's because every single sprite, so if you look at the default head here, has the same bounding box. So like, for example, if I made a shirt and set it as a pants, the equipment function would equip the shirt to the pants slot, but it would still be in the correct location, like on the XY. So your shirt would be in the right spot, but your pants would disappear because the shirt took the pants slot. It's kind of weird. We just did this way to make it easier to align the sprites and animation. So if we actually look at, let's see if I can find the Aseprite file. Decked out knight. And then I believe it's in the player folder. Here we go. So you can see here, by making all the sprites the same size, we can easily just unhide and hide each item, and then animate it so that they all look right over each other. We just have them layered so that like the helmets are kind of in the middle, and then the back weapons are behind, and the front weapons are in front, and the hairs are kind of in the middle as well. Yeah, here's the front back weapons are down here because Aseprite has the layers reversed from the order vertically that Godot has them. But yeah, so this was a decision made of having the sprites all be the same bounding box, just to make it a little easier to animate and draw, which Jared did almost all of. And then I did all this crappy code. Heck yeah. So that's a basic little overview of how we handled character customization and management for this game. It's a very basic implementation, and I just wanted this to be a reminder that do what you can. If it runs well, and from the player's perspective, then great. Try to make it as easily manageable as you can. But it's all about concept, and there's no real right way to do something. This is just a way to do it. It's definitely not the best way to do it. For example, one problem we ran into is towards the end of the game, we're like, wait, are all the items accessible in at least one of the shops? Because we realized that there were a few items that we made that were not in a shop yet. So we had to manually verify using a spreadsheet that we made in Google Sheets, so we could do it at the same time, what items were in which shop, so we can figure out which items were not in a shop yet. And that took a long time. So I figure if we did something like more like a database style system, with managing like what items have what stats, and then like which shops have what items, that'd be a simple search to see if items are in shops yet. But maybe for a game that matters more, we'll worry about something like that. Anyway, thanks for watching. Link in the description for the game. Let us know if you like it. Tweet us your decked out knights, and talk to you later.